This episode and every episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show is brought to you by Ironmonger Brewing. Visit Ironmonger at their tap room in Marietta, Georgia, or online at ironmongerbrewing.com.
Open up a tab, grab a seat, and pour a pint. It's time for the Beer Guys Radio Show.
You want free beer? Go to the brewery.
Dedicated to the art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer.
Yo, what's wrong with the beer we got?
Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Brian Hewitt.
And welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios in Marietta, Georgia. This week, we're talking with Back Paddle Brewing Company. We'll also talk with DJ Brian Orlando about a collaboration beer with an important mission. I'm Tim Dennis, and with me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Brian Hewitt.
Hey, Tim. So as you said, joining us today, we have Kyle McCloud, the owner of Back Paddle, and also Jason Slater, the head brewer for Back Paddle. We're going to talk about the beers brewed with kveik yeast and brewing on a nanoscale, and we're going to get into the Never Alone collab between DJ Brian Orlando and 1940s Brewery. So, guys, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So, Kyle, we just opened up your Fashioned Superstition. Can you give us a quick rundown on this beer?
Sure, that's a lager-style beer. Only we brew that with the Lutris strain of kveik yeast. So it comes out a lot cleaner than some of the others, giving us that kind of fake lager taste and texture and color.
The pseudo lager, right?
Pseudo lager, you bet.
Okay, good deal. Well, guys, we'll get back with you in just a second. We are going to now join Brian Orlando, or Brian's going to join us.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about a really important beer that he did with 1940s Brewing Company, collaboration beer. And Brian, how are you doing today, sir?
Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate this a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely. When you reached out to us, I'm like, you know what? This is a good mission. It's nice to see people doing things, to raise awareness for certain causes. So you collaborated with 1940s Brewery. The beer is called Never Alone, and it's got a really important message. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's a beer for suicide prevention and mental health awareness. The beer is actually a mission. I'm reading this off the can. It's a double dry hop New England India Pale Ale with notes of lime. I don't know much about beer. I just work with suicide prevention charities. The 1940s Brewery came to me and said, let's do something, because we shot a music video for suicide prevention at that brewery 2 years ago.
Okay. Now, that's the music video. Now, I thought the video was in conjunction with the beer, but this is something separate, and then you came in and did the beer behind that, correct?
Yes. We shot the music video with a very good friend of mine. Unfortunately, she had lost her battle with depression about a year later, so we shelved the project.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear that.
When the pandemic hit, we decided to release the video. It did well, and then the 1940s Brewery said, let's take it further. So they brewed this beer. We put a QR code on the can. If you're drinking, just having a beer to relax and maybe not feeling well, you could scan the can and watch a inspirational music video.
So where can people get the Never Alone beer?
As of right now, on Long Island and the 5 boroughs in New York, but we're working on getting that beer out to everyone, sharing the recipe. It was an idea from the 1940s Brewery.
Very cool, very cool. Now, the music video, that's got some of the acts that did that video are ones some of us older folks may know a little bit about, right?
I called in some favors. It's cool. Kevin from Candlebox, Vinny from Sponge, and Brendan from Wheatus. The drummer is actually the touring drummer of One Direction, who is a friend of Brendan's. Okay. And they all did this free of charge for me as a favor for the initiative.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
very cool,
I saw Wheatus in Atlanta back around 2000, 2001. So that's the only one I've seen actually there.
I don't think I've seen any of them actually, but I'm familiar with most. I think all of them actually. Yeah, that's very cool.
They have been a part of my career since I started 15 years ago. They also helped me launch this mission called the Choose Song Challenge. The challenge is on the can. We just ask people to post a 30 to 60 second inspirational video of you talking about a song that lifted you out of a funk with the hashtag Choose Song. And the idea is maybe someday somebody's looking for some inspiration. Here is your favorite song, and it could help them in life.
I know how that is, because there's songs that definitely lift me up, get me pumped, put you in a certain state of mind.
For sure.
Sometimes you're in that funk, just turn on a good song. I had a friend that had kids, and they loved that song with the SpongeBob, Best Day Ever. So this dude he's a grown adult, but that was his feel-good song. It got him pumped up, and whatever works for you. Absolutely, make it work.
I can definitely vouch for the fact that music is makes a huge impact during my working day. I play it the entire day, and when it's not playing, I'm not as productive. I just know that for a fact.
Gotta have some tunes going,
I think it's a very important and very powerful thing. So it's a really great idea. It's a really great cause.
Brian, this is a great cause. We appreciate you joining us. Tell us a little bit about the beer. I'm actually going to reach out to you outside of the show, get some more info and links from you. And folks, we'll put information and links and stuff in the show notes for this, so you can check it out and get more info on this beer, or if you're feeling down, somewhere to go to, lift up there. Yeah. So, Brian, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Gentlemen, thank you. I had a good time talking to you.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Take care, guys.
Good cause, Brian.
Yes.
Good cause. It's good to see beer working in the community. There's so many things it's done to raise awareness, diversity, inclusion, mental health. People grab a beer. If you're sitting there having a beer, scan the code, check it out.
I mean, beer is all about being social, is being with other people, and, it's being positive. I think for the most part, people can drink for the wrong reasons, but I think we drink for the right reasons.
We do. Yeah. We do. We're the good ones, Brian.
Yeah, we're some of the good ones. Yeah. Well, Tim, I think we should get into beers of the week.
Now it's time for our Beers of the Week. Brought to you by The Nest, craft beer and barbecue in downtown Kennesaw, Georgia. TheNestKennesaw.com.
Well, Brian, as always, we have a fantastic list of beers to get into. We never have a shortage of beer.
We never do.
In the studio, so that's a good thing. We've got a good selection here from Back Paddle Brewing. We have their Battle of Dunnigan Scottish Ale. We have a Cat Line in the Sun Tripel, little Belgian style there. Couldn't See the Ground Imperial Stout. Sheets of Empty Canvas Black IPA, as I mentioned, the old-fashioned lager. There's an IPA here that I barely feel comfortable saying the name because, but it means something different. But WAP IPA. We'll talk about that a little more. So
sounds intriguing.
It's controversial. That's a controversial term these days, Brian. So we'll definitely talk about it some. But Brian, can you tell us what's happening in the news?
What's in the news? The beer guys have the scoop.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Time for headlines.
Well, the big news of the week appears to be the Brewers Association list of the top 50 breweries for 2020, and it's based by volume, so volume numbers. And so really quick, I'll just give you the top 10. At 10, we've got Deschutes Brewery. 9 is Stone. 8, Artisanal Brewing Ventures. Man, that's a hard one to say. 7's Bell's. 6 is Canarchy. 5 is Gambrinus. RIP Bridgeport. 4 is Duvel Morgat. 3 is Sierra Nevada, 2 is Boston Beer Company, and surprise, at number 1 is Yuengling.
I honestly didn't realize how big Yuengling was for a long time because years ago, my friends used to talk about going back to Pennsylvania to get the beer. So I kind of thought Yuengling was like my Jenny Cream up in New York.
Yeah, it's not at all limited to that area. Honorable mention to the guys from Sweetwater for grabbing spot 11, and previous guest on the show, New Glarus, for grabbing spot 12.
And consider New Glarus is just Wisconsin.
Just
That's
Wisconsin, yeah, and they're that big. Interesting news from the UK, an illegally bulldozed London pub was reconstructed brick by brick and is opening back up in April. It's a pretty crazy story. A real estate developer bulldozed a 1920s pub, which was being considered for designation as an English heritage site. Apparently, it's a pretty common practice over there for real estate developers to just knock something down and pay a fine and just move on with whatever they were going to do with the space. And that's what they thought was going to happen here. But here's the thing. The English Heritage Organization created an extensive documentation on the structure, meaning it was impossible to rebuild it almost exactly the way it was, which gave the British court system an option they really never had before, the option to rebuild, and they ruled accordingly. So even the people that were protesting the demolition were surprised by the outcome. It sets a heck of a precedent over there.
I saw that, and I was thinking, you know what? That'll teach the developers. Don't just go in there. I was surprised to hear that the developer just went in and leveled something. They're like, we'll pay the fine.
That's exactly it. I guess that's common practice over there because they know that's how the game works. Or they'll take part of the roof off and just let floodwaters ruin the structure, and then they have to knock it down.
What terrible human beings
I know, right? Well, good news for the makers of Pepto-Bismol. A Virginia brewery is seeking recognition for the world's hottest beer. The Maltese Brewing Company's Signal 1 2.0 Pineapple IPA is brewed with Carolina Reaper chilies and is 70% hotter than their first version, which was brewed with only 299 chilies per half keg. So I'm guessing we're going about 500 chilies per half keg, Carolina Reapers. At the moment, there's no official Guinness record for the world's hottest beer. Maltese is hoping to change that. They're working with the University of Mary Washington to get an official reading on the heat, concentrations of capsaicin and dihydrocapsaicin and all that sort of thing. And they plan to submit their findings to Guinness in the coming weeks, Tim.
That sounds terrible.
I know,
I'm
right?
Pass on that beer. Yeah. Well, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break. But we'll be back very soon to talk with Back Paddle Brewing.
Have you ever thought about owning your own brewery but don't know what it takes to get one built? We're Storytime Construction, and we build breweries. We're Georgia's most experienced and hands-on contractors when it comes to building new breweries and tap rooms, or expanding existing breweries. We offer full build-outs, remodeling, and additions, as well as consulting and construction management. Give us a call at 770-733-4343. Storytime Construction. We build breweries.
Craft beer deserves craft glass. Thick Boys Glass has curated an online collective of glass artisans around the USA to bring you hand-blown beer glassware. These unique glasses are stylish and durable and have plenty of room to hold a tall boy of your favorite beer. Use code BEERGUYS at thickboysglass.com to get 15% off your order. Thick Boys Glass, that's THICCBOIS glass.com.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Now, back to the Beer Guys radio show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Remember, all episodes are available on demand, so if you missed the broadcast, get the podcast. Beer Guys Radio is available on all popular and unpopular podcasting apps. Now let's get back to Back Paddle Brewing.
Back Paddle Brewing, Kyle McCloud, owner and founder, correct, sir?
That is correct.
And I think you're the form you filled out, chief bottle washer, cook, floor sweeper, all of that, right?
Yeah. If it involves cleaning or cooking or kegging off beers, I'm probably getting it done.
You're in it. Now, Back Paddle Brewing is in Lincolnton, Georgia, which is a pretty small town, correct?
It is. I think the entire Lincoln County is right around 5,000 people.
Okay.
So
I think there's that many in my subdivision. I think so.
Probably.
Yeah. Now, also, Kyle, we talked about you're not from Lincolnton, and being a town that small, you don't see a lot of people that transplant to very, very small towns like that. How did you end up in Lincolnton?
So I was living in the next county over. I work at the local Army base for my day job, and the next county over still won't allow breweries to happen. So,
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Through my catering company I had on the side at the time, my beef farmer said, well, why don't you try Lincoln County? I didn't expect much, but when I called the local chairman of the commission, he said, when can you get here and how can we help you? So that was pretty positive.
It's interesting that we still see these days that there are counties, municipalities that still don't want breweries.
Even a county as large as Columbia County, where we were at, I mean, they have hundreds of thousands of people there, and they still don't allow them.
Interesting.
That's crazy.
I know it happens all over the country, but we do face it more here in the South. We're here in the Bible Belt, and there are some religious oppositions to alcohol. And especially when you get in the rural areas, we're fairly lucky here in Metro Atlanta because it's pretty liberal, not as much. But, you get into the rural South, there is a lot of Baptists. It's evil. It's the devil's juice, Brian.
As soon as we got Sunday sales, I forgot about all the hardships of living under the kind of the Baptist authoritarianism. I'm just like, oh, everything's normal here. I forget. There's places out there where, they're going to control what you're drinking and when you're drinking and when you're buying it. So
yeah, and we still get locals that come in here and say, 5 to 10 years ago, Lincoln County was completely dry. So the fact that we have a brewery now is huge.
There's been a lot of education, say the last decade or so, about what breweries are all about, and the fact that it's community. There's so much more to it. Anytime you have alcohol, you're going to have people that abuse it.
Sure.
But for the most part, and we'll talk about your community involvement as we get into this more, Kyle, but for the most part, breweries really do a lot to lift up a community, rather than cause problems.
They do. And out here, it's really cool because the Army base is expanding. They've got a lot more young, tech-savvy folks who are coming out here. And as the next county over fills up, they're sprawling out here. So we're getting a lot more of that. Every weekend, we probably have a couple dozen folks who are popping into the brewery telling us they're looking for land to build a house all the way out here.
Okay. Now, and Kyle, you've mentioned military, you've mentioned catering, making beer. You got your hands in all kinds of stuff, huh?
Yeah, it's one of those things. When I got out of service, when I had idle time on my hands, it just wasn't a good thing. So the busier I stay, the happier I seem to stay.
Okay,
I can
can't argue with
understand
that then. What got you started in brewing?
I started home brewing actually, I think I was 16 or 17. Turns out that they do not card you, or at least did not card you for hops and barley.
For the ingredients?
That's true.
Right.
Yeah. They're technically non-alcoholic, all those things.
So I made a lot of bad beer in my dad's barn in southwestern Michigan. Joined the service, brewed off and on, got to tour the world and try what good beer was, and then finally come back and try to replicate those.
So I'm curious, at the brewery from week to week or day to day, what do you spend more time doing, brewing or cooking?
I spend more time brewing. That was part of why we brought Jason on board. Jason was an employee at a local bottle shop and homebrew supply shop. I was having some health issues, and between my wife and my cardiologist and myself, they said I had to give something up. Turns out I found a brewer before we found a chef.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Makes sense.
Works out.
So, Jason, that answers a question. I was going to say, how'd you get connected up with him? But is this your first foray into professional brewing?
The first foray into professional brewing. I've been home brewing for about 3 years.
Okay.
And I've been about 10 years in the beer business. Sold a beer at a local package shop, 2 different local package shops in the Augusta metro area.
What kind of beer were you into brewing back in the home brewing days?
Home brewing, just about every other batch I put together was a Saison. My favorite style is a Saison DuPont, which clocks in and around 9 to 11% range. So the first couple of batches were pretty beefy.
Oh, your versions of it were a little high.
DuPont Imperial there, right?
The great thing about home brewing is you can turn the dials just a little bit.
That's right. Yeah.
Massive results.
A few weeks ago, we did the Saison show here where we talked about our love for Saisons. And, we actually had a Blackberry Farms classic Saison that we drank before we got on the air here. We're big Saison fans as well.
We are indeed. Excellent. We knew you were good people.
And I'm hearing more chatter about them recently. I'm seeing more online. I forget what the term is, but it's like let's say you don't notice that everybody drives a Chevrolet Caprice, and then you get a Chevy Caprice,
and then you notice
them everywhere. So I don't know if it was always there and I didn't notice it, but I feel like it's picking up again.
There's a term for that. There's a name for that. I don't remember what it is, but I see that with Saisons. I've seen that a lot with smoke beers too recently. And we did a smoke beer show too. So
yeah. Now, Jason, we didn't have a Saison in the mix here.
No Saison was on the way. We've got a Saison that's in the kegs at this moment.
So it is happening. Saison is happening.
Saison
we ended up tapping it on Saturday.
Okay. Good stuff, man. Absolutely. We noticed the name Back Paddle Brewing. It seems like there's got to be a story there. Where'd the name come from?
Yeah, so when I moved down here to Georgia, we had pretty much packed everything up. I quit culinary school, had an offer to come down here to the military base. But we got down here, I had no friends, no contacts. Through a couple of veterans groups, I got into kayak fishing and kayaking around the area, and met up with an owner of a kayak shop that unfortunately just closed up due to COVID. But we formed this community of veteran, mostly kayakers in the area. Our kind of unofficial motto here is just keep paddling. The second time I went out kayaking with these guys, we went down the Savannah River, down the rapids, and I was freaked out all day long. And they said, it'll be fine. Just keep paddling. You'll be all right. Keep paddling.
Keep paddling.
Keep paddling. They keep back paddling or just paddling?
Just keep paddling.
Just keep paddling. Whichever direction, Brian.
Okay, either way.
When I lived in Arkansas as a younger fella, there's not a lot in Arkansas. I'm not a big fan of the state, if I must admit. So sorry to our Arkansas listeners. I'm not my favorite state.
We just lost a bunch of people.
But we did have a lot of streams and rivers there to go, tubing or canoeing on. And we'd go, and I remember, gosh, I may have been 16 at the time. We went on a kayak trip, and it was me and my dad, or a canoe trip. And we overturned, and the paddle was floating away. So I grabbed the paddle and I went to pull it, and we were kind of in a light rapid, and it pulled the paddle underwater, and I kept pulling, and it popped out of the water, and I baseball swing hit my dad square in the head with that boat paddle. So he was angry, but I didn't intend it. So that's my kayaking / canoeing down the river. I kept paddling right into my dad's head.
Just keep paddling, right?
Yes. Right.
So my question is how do you get around the fact that kayaks have a shortage of cup holders? That's the biggest thing that keeps me from trying kayaking is I got no place to put my beer.
A lot of the modern ones have a cup holder.
Do they really?
Especially the fishing ones. And if you don't have the cup holder, there's usually a pod in the front. You can throw a couple crawlers in. Probably not crawlers for you guys, but a couple bombers or something.
Okay.
See, Brian's short-term memory is like 2 weeks ago we went in Cabela's and they had a pretty tricked out kayak there that had the cup holders and stuff on it. He'd forgotten about that. So
I did, and also I saw an opportunity for a bad joke, so
okay,
I had to go for it.
See how bad the joke was. Do we have a boo track over there, Nathan? Do we have? I guess we don't.
So what's the back paddle of it come from in the name? So the kayaking, what's back paddling? It's just going in reverse or what?
It's just sometimes when you go down the rapids, you have to back paddle, you have to forward paddle, whatever it really takes to get through those rapids.
Okay.
Just do it up.
Just adjusting. Right. Adjust to the times, Tim.
You just got to adjust. Absolutely. Well, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We need to take another break. But when we come back, we'll find out if Back Paddle Brewing ever got their sharks. Brian and Tim, the Beer Guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth are always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy, Brian. They've got 18 of them.
As for the truck part, that's where it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks, so you're getting a different menu every day.
Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth.
Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the Beer Guys sent you.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. I want to give a quick shout out to our newest radio affiliate, News Talk K57 on 570 AM in Agana, Guam. That's Guam, Tim.
Guam.
That's an island.
The island of Guam,
it's
correct.
Very far away.
Beer Guys International.
Beer Guys International. Catch Beer Guys Radio on News Talk K57 every Saturday at 10 p.m. and Sunday at 7 p.m. Guam time.
Chamorro Standard Time.
Chamorro Standard Time. There you go. Now let's get back to Back Paddle Brewing.
Kyle, Jason, thanks again for joining us, guys. We just got into your Battle of Dunnigan, Scottish Ale. Now, I got a question. We're going to dive deep into yeast talk here, but is this brewed with the kveik yeast as well? Because I think we found out on your Instagram that maybe there's a little break from that yeast. But for the most part, that's what you brew with, correct?
Yeah, we brew almost exclusively with the kveik yeast, and the Battle of Dunnigan is definitely one of them that we continue using that on.
Okay. What made you decide to go that route?
So when I was building this brewery out, I pretty much funded it from my savings account, my retirement fund, and a couple of small friends and family investors. So when it came down to equipment purchases, I didn't have the money for jacketed fermenters or even stainless steel fermenters at this point. So I had to get creative, started researching around as I was making test batches and discovered the kveik yeast. Little did I know other people were already using it here and there, but started using it in test batches. When I started linking up more with Jason, I gave him a big pitch of it and I said, hey, do something with this. Let me know what you think. Let's taste the beers. And that was pretty much the interview, take this yeast, make your beer, and let's try it out.
Here's your interview. Make beer.
Go make beer.
Okay. So is it the temperature control aspect of it?
It is.
Okay. That makes sense. That's one thing we've talked about. And Jason talking about saisons. Before we had temperature control in our homebrew, that was one of the things we liked about brewing those. You can run those temperatures up.
Sure.
And or just do it at room temp or whatever. You're still going to get a really nice beer out of it.
Absolutely. I hope we can get a sample of that saison once it's caked up off to you guys too. That's something I'm trying out. That one's a blend of saison strain and finished off with a blend of kveik. So as far as I know, no one else has done one of those.
Okay.
Not intentionally, probably.
Right. Maybe they have. Who knows? Now, I know you talked, Kyle, about funding for the brewery, and we saw something. I know you had a Kickstarter, and unfortunately that didn't meet funding, but that's not that uncommon anymore. It's a lot harder to
really
get funding for a brewery these days. If you'd done it 5, 6, 7 years ago, they fund almost instantly.
Right.
But one thing Brian picked up, you said something about getting sharks at the brewery. So what prompted that, and have you figured it out? Do you have sharks at Back Paddle?
We don't have sharks at Back
that's too
Paddle yet.
Yes.
Yes.
The hope is
we'll keep
alive.
working on it. Lincoln County is home to what they call Georgia's freshwater coast and Clarksville Lake. We got towards the end of that Kickstarter campaign, and we were really reaching, and figured we'd throw out some stuff and see what we could catch. Unfortunately, it was not investors.
That's too bad. That's too bad. I would have, if I'd seen it, man, I'd have bought in for the sharks.
Well, there are freshwater sharks. I think, is it bull sharks or something that can swim up into fresh water? Do you have any sharks in that lake? Are there any landlocked, interesting species of sharks? Or
not that I know of. Every now and then you get somebody that will post a gag reel on some of the fishing pages, but I don't think there's anything in the lake, shark-wise.
I know a lot of like bull sharks, and I think piranha have made it a good ways up the Mississippi.
Yeah.
Like you'll hear them talk about, hey, we found a piranha in Memphis.
Piranha?
Yeah.
Or you mean barracuda?
No, I mean piranha.
Oh, no kidding.
I mean piranha, and it may be someone dumping them or something like that.
Oh,
but,
okay.
I'm not necessarily that I don't think they're swimming from, the Amazon to Memphis, Tennessee. But
nothing would surprise me with them.
Right. That's right. They're going up there for some of that barbecue. Memphis in May is a great festival. Maybe they're coming up for that.
Deep fried piranha, baby.
Yeah, get what you can there. We talked in the first segment, we talked with Brian Orlando about his beer, to support suicide prevention and mental health awareness. And Kyle, your brewery is very involved in the community and supporting causes there. You have a campaign you call Beer for Good, your charity program. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So I borrowed the hashtag Beer for Good program from my good buddy Steve Lowe. He runs South Bend Brew Works up in South Bend, Indiana. When I was up there going to culinary school, they opened up, and this was it's a good way to give back to the community. I went up and talked to him on a family trip back to South Bend. Said, hey, I really want to take this back to Georgia with me. Can I use it? He said, by all means. We don't own it. Do what you want to do, modify it. And that's what we've done. We try to sponsor 3 nonprofits every quarter, focusing on a couple of veteran nonprofits and then something local. 25 cents from every beer that we sell here goes straight to our Beer for Good program. So last quarter, we were able to cut 3 checks. This quarter, just ending now, we'll cut 3 more checks.
That's pretty impressive considering you're a nano brewery. You're not one of the big guys that is, bringing in tons and tons of foot traffic, right?
We're not. I mean, people really have to be traveling out here to come to Back Paddle or coming to the lake and stumble upon us on Google Maps, which we get more than our fair share of. But at the end of the day, like you said, breweries, almost no matter where they are, help their community. And I didn't want to come into this, even as a nano, without carrying that on. It's almost brewery tradition, if you will.
Sure. Yeah, that's we talked with Dan Kleban at Maine Beer Company, and he's in I think it's called, I'm going to mess up the name, 1% for Good or 1% for the Planet.
Yeah,
something along those lines there. Yeah. But he talked about, start where you can with it. If you say we're going to give 1% and your brewery brings in $1,000 a year, you give your 1%, but when your brewery's bringing in $1 million a year, that really amplifies there.
Seriously.
You don't have to say I'm going to give, X dollars or I'm giving away 25%. If you commit to that 1% as you grow, what you're able to give grows.
Yeah, and as we sell more beer, more money is going to go to the Beer for Good program. Right around Christmas time, we did a promo where if you brought in brand new shirts, socks, underwear, that sort of thing, we gave you a free pint, and all those clothes went to a veterans nonprofit out of Macon. To help folks who really need it, especially during the holiday season.
That's awesome. Yeah, good stuff.
I've been meaning to ask the name of this beer. We mentioned briefly that it's brewed with the kveik yeast. What's the Battle of Dunnigan, and what's behind that?
Every now and then, Jason leaves a name off of a beer, and I get the privilege of naming it. My last name is McCloud. The McCloud clan in Scotland is from the Isle of Skye, and the Castle Dunvegan is the longest inhabited castle in all of Scotland. Don't quote me on that or go to the wiki on me. But so when we did a Scottish ale and he left the name off of it, I said, well, let's come up with something. And we have a plan up our sleeve for the next variation of that. We may or may not have a couple freshly dumped bourbon barrels. It gets a Scotch ale.
Oh, nice.
Fill them up, man.
Yeah.
I should have Googled that. I think there's a rabbit hole I could have really run down with that. That sounds interesting.
BBBOD.
Yeah,
is what you can call it, man. And I'm all on board for that. Bourbon barrel Scottish ales are really nice.
I'm a fan. I'm definitely a fan.
Yeah, they are. We rolled that one out somewhat ironically for our St. Pat's celebration, and I think we've sold almost half of it already. Which for
Okay.
us, I mean, right now we're selling 2.5 barrels of beer a week, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. For, town of 5,500 or what have you. Speaking of the small town, is there any craft beer scene there? Was there a craft beer scene? I think a lot of times I hear when you're in a small town like that, that educating the community is a big part of your brewery.
That is a huge part, and that's actually most of what we do on the weekends here is educating, especially the local crowd. We do get a lot of tourists. We get a lot of folks from the neighboring county who are young tech folks from the Army base. Amazon's building a huge distro center here. But the local folks we do have to educate. They've had some craft beer. Savannah River, Riverwatch Brewing are right over in
Right,
Augusta.
sure.
And we're really only about an hour from Athens too. So if folks have traveled a little bit outside of Lincoln County, then they've got to experience that. But we're still teaching folks. We get a lot of what's the closest thing you have to Bud Light.
Sure. Yeah.
And we always try to keep something on hand for those folks as well.
Yeah, it's important. We're seeing a lot of breweries that are talking about diversifying where they have seltzer, of course.
Yes.
The seltzers, sodas. We've seen a couple get into wine, just
cider.
Hard seltzer has been big for us.
But you definitely have to have the gateway beer, something that they're comfortable with that will bring them in, like make them realize that, oh, beer can have flavor too. Like it's not just carbonation.
Right. Start them out on their lager, and next thing you know, they're knee deep in the imperial stouts.
The pastry
That's
stouts.
right. Just having a good time with it. Yeah. Well, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take another break, but we'll be back very soon with more from Back Paddle Brewing.
Looking for great craft beer to enjoy at home? Get your beer to go at the Nest in Kennesaw, Georgia. Choose from their 48 taps to enjoy there with some tasty barbecue and take some home with you for later. Grab a crispy Pilsner, a nice tart sour, or a bold stout to sit by the fire. Just bring your growler in and choose a favorite or two to take with you. It's our beer, your growler at the Nest for your brews to go. Check out the beer and food menus before you visit at thenestkennesaw.com.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. Patrons get cool perks like Beer Guys swag and commercial-free episodes. Now let's get back to Back Paddle Brewing.
Guys, we dipped into it a little bit earlier, talking about the kveik yeast. And that one was interesting. We heard a lot of buzz of that, maybe a year ago, Brian?
Yeah,
where people were talking, that's it's something. Are you guys familiar with Lars blog, the website?
Yes.
Okay. I got a lot of our info from Lars Marius Garschel, I think his name.
So.
Something along those lines. But his site is a great source of information. I just find the yeast interesting.
I think he might be the really authoritative source because he's the person that's actually going to all of these Norwegian farms and collecting information, sampling things, and compiling it all for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, how many strains have you used? And you know what? I haven't talked about it in a while. Are they still discovering or releasing new kveik strains, or is it kind of a set group?
Yeah, so Omega is who we get most of our stuff from. They are pulling different strains out. So far, we've used 2 base strains of kveik. We're using Voss and Hornadal. And then for anything that we want phenols in, we're actually using a Lithuanian farmhouse yeast, which has the similar, we can ferment it hot characteristics, but it gives us those peppercorn, clovey notes that we're looking for in our Belgians and any of those type of beers. And then most recently with our lagers, our pseudo lagers, if you will, we've started using a isolate called Lutra, which ferments out super clean.
That's pretty cool. Now, I know that kveik yeast have a lot of temperature tolerance on the high end. Do they perform on the lower end of the spectrum as well?
The lowest end, they tend to settle out around lagering temperatures. So when they put the pseudo lager into the tank to get ready to carbonate and chill, it tends to settle down and particulate out. It behaves like a classic yeast strain under those circumstances.
Gotcha. All right.
Have you tried taking any of these strains through like extremes just to see what they do?
Not really. We brew completely at ambient temperature, and it's really the temperature is the whole reason we decided to use the kveik strains. I know a lot of folks try to use them early on because of the talk that you could ferment out in 3 days.
Oh, yeah.
But what we found is, 80, 90 degrees when we pitch, 3 or 4 days it gets near terminal gravity, but it's still just like any other beer. Give it a week and a half, and it's going to be a better beer and a better product.
Absolutely.
Let it run the cleanup crew in there
Seriously.
after the
That's
fermentation's done. Yeah.
Given some time, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to do this, but over time, if it sits on that yeast, will they continue to chew through it like maybe like a Brett or something would, like go beyond where a normal yeast would?
Even without letting it sit, just during our normal fermentations, one of the things we've had to really kind of adapt to is the fact that it chews through the sugars and dries things out really well, which initially was giving us kind of a sharpness. It was on all of our beers. I think now that we're 8 or 9 generations in the repitching, some of that's going away. It's kind of developing another characteristic.
Have you figured out kind of where for lack of a better term, the
Sweet
terminal
spot?
point is as far as how many generations you can go with this?
Not yet. I think, and I could let Jason talk a little bit more. I think we're at 8 or 9. We've had to rebuy Voss once just because we got a contamination in our pitches that we kept back, but that's been about it.
I think with like in the true kveik Norwegian farmhouse brews, they have that ring of sticks.
It's like a wreath.
A wreath.
Yeah.
I see the photographs. Yeah.
What's it called?
It's an oaken ring usually.
Okay, yeah. So I'm assuming since basically they put that in their beer to ferment and then just hang it up and throw it in the next one, I'm assuming you can run many, many generations on this yeast.
Yeah, we've our Hornadal strain, which seems to be the character is we're still figuring out as we go along.
Okay,
and it's
all right.
Picks up just as healthy and just as vibrant as the prime pitch. And
have you seen any changes in the 8 or 9 generations?
The only one I've really noticed a lot of was with the Lithuanian farmhouse strain Javaru. The first couple pitches, that yeast seems to be kind of slow to take off. And we don't get as many of the phenols, but in subsequent pitches, it takes off faster, performs more like the other kveik strains.
That kind of makes sense because the guys who pick up and get going reproduce more than the ones who don't. So over time, you would think they'd breed out the guys who don't because
art imitates life.
Yes, or the other way around. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah. Do you guys use the oaken rings to hold your yeast?
No oaken rings. We're pitching into a flip top resealable pitchers.
Just go all the way with it, guys.
Oh,
go Norwegian farmhouse. Start laddering through a wooden box full of hay.
Yeah.
And just
juniper
go all the
boughs
way with it.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Branches,
there really is a lot of interesting stuff you look at. And again, I think this is from Lars' blog, but he went to some, Eastern European farmhouse and they baked the mash.
That's right.
Like they would fire an oven up and she had like this wooden crate or some kind of crate, but they would mash a little bit and then put the mash in there. And I know they cranked these ovens up to they estimated like 500 degrees and threw the mash in there and just let it go till it totally cools out. They go the next day and ladder it and run the wort and all that stuff. So
now with the way the kveik works, it's probably able to chew through some of that normal yeast wouldn't be able to. Because I mean, who knows what you're getting as a result of baking the mash like that. So, and I was thinking the interesting thing about the development of the kveik yeast is they had those wreaths. So what they were doing is hanging them up in their barns over time between batches. Those are picking up other microbes and other organisms.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
at some point,
right,
you get a cohesive blend that probably are strong enough to survive, but it develops differently from farmhouse to farmhouse. So,
sure.
Yeah, and it's just one of those yeast that you can just abuse, it seems, and it keeps coming back. We've had one incident where our Voss got contaminated. It kind of smelled of burned tires. We didn't even pitch it. But I mean, for the most part, we don't do the traditional things you're taught as a home brewer or I'm sure there's going to be other brewery owners and brewers who are just shaking their head at us. But I mean, we just pull a little bit off the cone, a slurry, put it in a sanitized pitcher, put it in the cold room. When we need it, whether it's tomorrow or a month from now, that's what we grab and we just repitch.
And it's always anxious to ready to go.
Ready to go.
I think kveik is just loves abuse. If you magnify them, I think you see a little ball gag in their mouth. They really like to be beaten.
Freaky deaky.
Yeah, they are
Brian.
freaks. That's the freak of the yeast world. Yeah.
You should I think you guys should market that. So definitely.
I think that's our next crowler.
That's it.
Freak of the yeast.
The freak of the yeast. So is there any intention, you talked about, Kyle, that when you started out, that kind of the main reason for you for going that way was just a cost savings with the temperature control, and yet that, do you have intentions as you grow to migrate away from that, or are you happy rocking and rolling with the kveik?
Honestly, right now, I'm happy with the product that we're getting with the kveik, and if it's not broke, don't fix it. So right now, we're just going to keep going with it. Obviously, we hope to upgrade our equipment. Everything in here is home built. We're still doing it old school. Things you'd have seen in the 90s that you're not seeing nowadays with a lot of breweries. We're fermenting in plastic conicals. We built the brew house ourselves out of stainless steel 55-gallon drums. I mean, pretty much everything's just homebrew, but bigger. So eventually we'd like to upgrade that. But with the yeast, there's really no point in changing it.
Are there any strains of kveik that you're not using yet? Because I think there's a number of them out there that you're looking at.
We just ordered a strain called SB that I don't think we've pitched yet. And I mean, there's a ton. The most popular are the Hornadol and the Boss.
Yeah, for sure.
So we picked those up first. And then the Lutra, we really wanted to get into the seltzer game because, I mean, we're here to make a little bit of money as well. So we got into the Lutra, and it's fermenting our seltzers. It's fermenting those pseudo lagers and pilsners.
Kveik seltzers. All right.
That, you know what? That's an approach that I've not heard anybody else take yet. So Norwegian farmhouse seltzer.
Yeah, and we get a lot of people who come in here and say, I don't like seltzers, but I would drink a whole bunch of these. That yeast is just killing it in the fermentation game.
I've trash talked seltzers a lot, and I'm not a big fan of the movement, I should say. People who were downing certain beverages 5 years ago are now making alcoholic sugar waters and pitching them, as craft. Now, I know some people do put as much craft into the seltzer as anything, but to me, it's like the wine coolers of the 2020s, It's like, whatever, man. Put a Jolly Rancher in that and call it a Zima, Go on with it. Well, guys, is there any intentions to release a Zima clone?
Not a Zima clone. We do have a couple really crazy things coming out.
Okay.
Keep an eye on that around Memorial Day, 4th of July.
Good stuff.
I'm excited by kveik seltzer.
Kveik seltzer, it's interesting.
I'll give that a shot just because of the yeast involved.
We should take a trip to Lincolnton. You can take a kayak out looking for some bull sharks, Brian.
Exactly. Or Loch Ness monsters.
One of the two.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. If people want to learn what is going on and what's new with Back Paddle Brewing, what is the best way to do that?
The best way is going to be through social media, Facebook and Instagram, Back Paddle Brewing at both of them. Usually every Monday or Tuesday, we release what's going on, usually along with the beers that are going to be kicking over the weekend.
Awesome. Sounds good, guys. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Later.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Join us next week as we talk with Roadmap Brewing. We are Beer Guys Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week, and don't forget to drink local. Cheers.